Okay, Walkheads. Today we're looking at Tuesday, February 12th, solving cube and cube root equations on page 46. If you would, update your table of contents. All right, now your table of contents are updated. Let's take a look at our notes. All right, solve cube root equation on page 46. Solving cubic equation steps. Step 1, factor. Sum and difference of cubes or by grouping. Step 2, solve. Linear and or the quadratic. Little note, if the equation is not factorable, then graph the equation with the solutions. All right, now solving cube root equation steps. Step 1, isolate the cube root. Step 2, raise both sides of the equation to the power of 3. Step 3, simplify and solve. Good. Would update your notes. All right, now your notes are updated. Let's take a look at our examples. Solving cube and cube root equations on page 46. Example 1. Now, looks like we're going to factor using the difference of cubes. So the formula we need for example 1 is this. A minus B times A squared plus BX plus B squared. Or not BX, I'm sorry. BA. Okay. So A is X because X cubed is X and B is 2 because 2 cubed is 8. Okay, so now we're going to substitute these numbers into here. So that's X minus 2 times X squared plus 2 times X plus 2 squared. And that's going to set that equal to 0. Ignore this equal there. Whoa, brightness, I apologize. Light is the hardest thing to work with when you're making videos, I got to tell you. Especially when you're teaching because the light changes throughout the day, even at the end of the day is the worst. But there you go. Hopefully I got the light situated so we can continue. So now we set x minus 2 equals 0. That's the first one. So add 2 to both sides. So x equals 2. There's one of your solutions. But now we need to work with the x squared plus 2x plus 2 squared is 4. Now we're going to factor parentheses, parentheses equals 0. You know that x and x make x squared. Now we need to find all the combinations to make 4. So 1 times 4, 2 times 2. So 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 1 is 4. Okay, now we need to find the combination that combines to be 2. Well, 1 plus 4 is 5. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. Well, since none of those combinations work, then we can say this is not factorable. I'm going to say not F. Not F means not factorable. So since that didn't work, now we use the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Now, it looks like we're going to need to add some more lines here. So do that. Now, if you didn't add lines to your paper, that's okay, but I have to tell you, adding some lines helps keep your work a little bit organized. It also helps you so you don't take up too much space or run out of space, okay? So now A is 1, B is 2, C is 4. Okay, so we're going to substitute those numbers into here. So x equals -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 divided by 2 times 1. So then that's x equals -2 plus or minus the square root of, well, 2 times 2 is 4, minus 4 times 4 is 16, so that would be -12 divided by 2. The square root of negative number is I, so that's x equals -2 plus or minus the square root of 12i divided by 2. All right, so go ahead and finish up example 1. Let's take a look at example 2. All right, example 2. Now, in step 1 it says factor. Sum of difference cubes, that's not this. This is actually grouping because there's 4 terms. So we're going to factor something from the first 2 terms. It looks like they both have x squared. So I'm going to factor out a 1x squared from the first 2 terms, which leaves only 1x here and then minus 1 here. And we know that because x squared times x is x cubed, and x squared times -1 is -x squared. Now it looks like here we can factor out a 2, so that's plus 2. In essence, we divide 2 divided by 2 is 1x, and -2 divided by 2 is -1. And you know that's correct because 2 times 1x is 2x, 2 times -1 is -2. All right, so now this is by grouping, so we can group these together. So we have 1x squared plus 2 times 1x minus 1 equal to 0. So now we set each of those equal to 0, so x squared plus 2 equal to 0, and x minus 1 equal to 0. So here we're going to subtract 2 from both sides, so we get x squared equals -2. Take the square root of both sides. Now we know it's plus or minus. So the square, that becomes x, and then you have the square root of -2, which is x equals the square root of 2i, plus or minus. So I actually should have wrote plus or minus here, so let me just rewrite it. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 2i. Or you can write it as x equals square root of 2i and x equals negative square root of 2i. I prefer writing it just with the plus or minus there because it's one less step, but you could write it that way. Okay? And that looks pretty bad, so let's clean that up. There you go. Look, it's gone now. It's disappeared. All right, so now here you just add 1 to both sides, so x equals 1. And you box these in yellow so you can see which ones are which. So there's one of the solutions there. Here's a solution here. And then here's one of the solutions. Here's the other solution. All right, let's take a look at example 3. So again, we're going to factor by grouping. So then we can factor out, it looks like an x squared from both. So that's x plus 2. And then here, the only thing we can factor out is -1, so that leaves 5x plus 6 equals 0. Now, the problem you have here is that when you factor by grouping, these have to be the same. Since they're not, then we can say it's not factorable by grouping. So when that happens, you need to graph. So let's come down here and graph. So you need to draw an X and Y axis. So to graph that, we're going to use our calculator that I just dropped on the floor. All right, so we're going to go to New Document, No, Add Graph. I'm going to brighten the screen up a little bit. And then so we're going to type that in. Okay. So X cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x minus 6, enter. Now, we really, on this side, need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably 5 tick marks is fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we probably only need 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, your solutions when graphing are where it crosses the x-axis. So your first solution is -1. And then the next one is -2, -3. So -2, -3. And it looks like +2. So these are your solutions. So x equals -3, x equals -1, and x equals 2. And then once you have that, you just sketch a graph. So it comes up, goes through here, and like that. This can just be, this has to be a sketch. The key is really those points right there. All right, so finish up example 3. All right, now let's take a look at example 4. All right, now the first 3 examples were all cubic. Okay, now the next 3 examples are all cube root. Okay, so the first step in the cube root is isolate the cube root. So the first thing to isolate is going to divide both sides by 7. Anything divided by itself is 1, so you have the cube root of 5x minus 7 equals 84 divided by 7 is 12. Then you're going to cube both sides. Well, the cube and the cube root, they become power of 1. You get 5x minus 7 equals 12 cubed is 1,728. Add 7 to both sides. You get 5x equals 1,735. Divide both sides by 5. Make it a little blurry. This becomes 1x equals 347. I apologize for the blurriness. At some point, maybe I'll make a video without any blurriness, but we'll just keep going. All right. Now, first step, isolate the cube roots. We're going to add 6 to both sides. So you get the cube root of x plus 180 equals 6. You're going to cube both sides. That becomes power of 1. You get x plus 180 equals 6 cubed is 216. Subtract 180. So x equals is 36. All right, last example, example 6. Now the cube roots are, as I said, it's going to be, so you're going to have to cube both sides. So then that becomes power of 1. You're left with 1x plus 6 equals, now when you cube this, there's 3 of them. So 2 cube root of x minus 1 times 2 cube root of x minus 1 times 2 cube root of x minus 1. All right, so now we have 1x plus 6. 2 times 2 times 2 is 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And the cube root of this times this times this is just x minus 1. Okay, so then that's 1x plus 6. We're going to distribute 8. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. Now, whenever you have x's on both sides, you always subtract the smaller one. So you're going to subtract 1x from both sides. That's 0. That's gone. You get 6 equals 7x minus 8. Now you need to add 8 to both sides. So 14 equals 7x. Divide both sides by 7. That's 1. 2 equals x. All right, if you would, finish up your examples and start working on the assignment, and have a wonderful Wildcat day.